Hello, welcome to the Brazilian Health Nut Show. Here you will find cutting edge information provided by the best experts in the world so you can learn how to burn fat for the rest of your life. Bruno de Gama is the Brazilian health nut in a mission to solve the problems you have when trying to lose weight forever. He is a nutritional therapy practitioner, a certified personal trainer, and a holistic lifestyle coach by the Czech Institute. Don't forget to say hello and sign up to our free newsletter at www.brazilianhealthnut.com. Let's go.
All right. Thank you so much for being here with me, Danny, today. I really appreciate the time. Can you tell a little bit about your story from little Danny? And now you have a very cool business called Good Decisions most of the time. I really like your name. It's like how I live my life too.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Well, my story started, oh gosh, since I was a little girl. When I grew up, my parents, um, basically, we had a household of five kids. And when the dinner bell rang, we came running. Arms were reaching and food was typically flying. And what that did is it kind of created a sense of scarcity around our household. That if we didn't get to the food first, we wouldn't get any at all. And this, of course, was not true. We had more than enough food in our house. But inevitably, what would happen is we would heap too much food onto our plate. And when we couldn't eat it all, we would say, Mom, I can't eat anymore. I'm full. And Mom would say, Well, I don't care. You took it. You eat it.
Mhm.
And so our parents basically began to kind of train us away from our inner satiation signal. So instead of stopping eating because my physical body had told me that I'd had enough food, I kept going because my parents told me to. And they were very well intentioned parents by all means. In fact, they were just teaching me what they had learned. And, as children, if we buck the system, if I said, Mom, no, I really don't want to eat, and I kept fighting with Mom, I risked her disapproval. And
Yeah.
if she disapproved of me, and there was this feeling that maybe she might not love me. And so this is a big risk for kids. And so I basically began to be guided away from my internal hunger and satiation signals. And so instead of eating because I was hungry, I'd sit down for dinner and I'd say, Mom, I'm not hungry. And Mom would say, Well, I don't care if you're hungry or not, you're going to eat your dinner.
Yeah. You
And
gotta eat.
you got to eat. Yeah. And so I began to navigate the world based upon this. And because there was also this feeling of not wanting my mom's approval and love taken away from me, I just began to adapt. And eventually I just began to overeat and I gained weight. And I began to eat not because I was hungry, but also because I needed to soothe myself, or I was feeling empty and I wanted to fill myself up because I was lonely or I'd had a
Mm.
rough day. And so then I began to eat emotionally. And
Yeah.
so,
That's gonna. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. Um, yeah, and I know so many people, we all do this. I mean, all humans, I think, eat emotionally.
Yeah.
And as I grew up, I kind of navigated the world the best I could, but eventually I went back to school, became a nutritional therapist, and found myself in kind of the unique position where I was telling people during the day to eat their vegetables, and then I would go home at night and I would binge. And I knew that something was wrong. And I knew that I wanted to stop, but I felt like I was out of control. I felt like I had no control. I felt like I was driven by my compulsions. And there was this chaotic nature to my eating. And so I went and saw a psychologist. And I originally went to see him for some personal reasons, but I found that what he was teaching me on a personal level also translated towards food. And I began to come up with these strategies for myself on how to overcome emotional eating. And as I continued to grow and practice as a nutritional therapist, I began to continue to be on the hunt for strategies that would help myself and my clients to overcome this hurdle for weight loss, because this is big. I mean, there's millions and millions of people that want to lose weight that every year they try to diet unsuccessfully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, true. Did you go to NTA for your own, like to resolve your own problems, or did you know already? Oh, I'm gonna help people to also with their health.
Well, I went because I was in transition. I own a massage therapy practice, and I injured myself and couldn't do the massage anymore. And I loved helping people and figuring out the puzzle of people. So someone would come into me with some radiating pain into their arm, and I would be all excited to try and figure out, okay, is that radiating pain coming from a herniated disc? Is it coming from an impingement? And when I injured myself and I couldn't do that anymore, and I just kind of ran the business, it just wasn't my bliss. And so when the NTA program came across my desk, I just jumped at it because I knew then I could figure out the puzzle of people from a digestive standpoint, from a blood sugar regulation
Hmm.
standpoint. So for me, it was kind of a combination of I love helping people, and a part of what drives me is kind of learning and figuring out the puzzle.
Yeah, NTA is awesome. I'm also NTP, so I love it.
Yes, they have a
So
great program.
yeah, it's amazing. The main topic of today it's emotional eating, like you just talked a little bit about. Can we define a little better, like what is emotional eating? Because, like you even said before, we all eat by our emotions too. It's part of who we are. You not just eat because we have to, right? So, can we define a little better this?
Sure, sure. So when we eat, there's two different things to be aware of. When we eat, we're either eating to feed our physical body or eating to feed our emotions. And so emotional eating is when we eat any time other than when our physical body is calling to us for food. So, for and really good way, and this is the number one strategy that I work with my clients on is figuring out what is emotional eating and how do I know when I'm doing it. And the first strategy is basically learning how to eat only when your physical body is hungry. And
Mm.
so when the physical body is hungry, you feel it in your body. Your stomach begins to growl, and you may begin to feel, maybe a little queasy, and you definitely get a signal from your body that says, I think I'm hungry. And there's different stages. If you play around with your hunger and you put off hunger and you let it go a little bit more, that stomach growling may get stronger and you may get a little bit more queasy and you may even get a little bit nauseous. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you play around with your hunger and let it go even further, you can get to the point where your stomach is really growling. You may get nauseous, and all of a sudden you begin to lose mental clarity as your blood sugar levels begin to drop. And this is hunger on the extreme level. And a lot of people let their hunger go to this point and they start getting angry, or what people will call it hangry.
Yeah.
And so I encourage people to play around with their own hunger signal. And when you can identify what physical hunger is like, then you can separate and begin to tell the difference between emotional hunger. Emotional hunger typically arises from the head. It's a part of our thoughts, it's a part of our emotions. I come home, I've had a bad day, and I want to soothe myself because I've had a bad day, and so I'll reach for a glass of wine or a beer or some chocolate or whatever it is that I want to soothe myself with.
Yeah, this
Oftentimes,
reminds me my father.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you. This reminds me of my father. I'm in Brazil right now here with my family, and we even after we have dinner, for example, let's say 1 hour after, he goes to the refrigerator just to check it out of nowhere. Even though he's physically full, but he goes there to check it out. There is
Yes.
an emotional part there for sure. And also, I remember reading a book from Deepak Chopra about diet and nutrition, and he was the first chapter of the book was all about awareness. That's what you're just saying right now, because a lot of our behaviors sometimes we just go from the emotional side. It's not even the need, the physical need, right?
Yes, yes, we eat unconsciously. totally
Yeah.
unconsciously. And what your father's doing is his physical hunger has been satiated, but his emotional hunger has not.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, like, how do you start this conversation with people who are having problems related to emotional eating?
Well, basically, shining the light on it is the number one thing. When you bring consciousness to eating, everything changes. When I work with people and I train them to be in tune with their body and to tell the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger, then they begin to feed themselves when their physical body is hungry. And then what happens is then they can see what it is that they're trying to feed, soothe, or avoid. And so, how a couple of the strategies that I use is to guide people to take easy action steps. Sometimes it's, we get so caught up in the going and the doing, and we get home at the end of the day and we're eating while we're watching TV or we're multitasking, and we don't even sit down to honor, where our food comes from.
Yeah.
So, teaching people how to be present with their food, being grateful for their food, and to take very easy action steps. Oftentimes, people think that they have to do all or nothing. And an easy action step could be as simple as taking a deep breath. Anytime you feel the chaos of your emotions, because the nature of being present with your food is calmness. The nature of emotional eating is chaos. And so taking a deep breath and bringing presence to your eating experience is the number one thing.
Yeah.
And often this can still be difficult because when you're sitting in some of that discomfort, some of the things that come up can be painful. I mean, the things that we experience in life are inherently painful. We all experience loss and failure and rejection, and we all face our own aging and illness. And so, what we experience on a daily basis is inherently painful, but it doesn't do us any good to push it away or pretend that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So taking a deep breath is one, putting
Yeah,
down.
this is so simple. This is so
Yeah.
simple, but we don't do it most of the times because of the distractions that we have nowadays. There is TV is on, the radio might be on, we might be checking out our phones, and they might be texting, and noise comes from everywhere. So there is a lot of distractions nowadays,
Yes.
and so you're not relaxed. That's the first thing I talk to clients or my family or even myself. Is just when it's time for the meal, it's time to relax and be completely present with
Yes.
whoever is sitting with us, right? Not just like because of the emotional side, like we are just talking, but also physical. There is a lot of things going on in your body. And as you know, when we learn on NETA course, there is digestion enzymes going on, right? So you have to be on a parasympathetic stage. That means relaxed. When
Yes.
you're in a sympathetic stage, that means you're stressed. It's kind of like you're running from the tiger, and so you're not going to be producing enzymes to digest your food. So that means you have to calm down. You have to sit down and relax. That's why it's so important, right? And I think, especially in the USA, people are really like they don't sit anymore to have lunch or dinner with family. Here in Brazil, it's a little better still. In Europe, I think there is the cultural side it's better and help us with this subject of calming down and sitting and being present, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So what about people who come to you and say, "Oh my God, but eating healthy is boring." Like I hear all the time these people who come and like, "Oh, but I don't really enjoy eating healthy," because they have these conceptions of that eating healthy might be just broccoli with chicken breast, right?
Right.
How do you do that?
Well, I think my philosophy, which is of course good decisions most of the time, is because life is too short not to have chocolate. Life is too short not to have that bacon cheeseburger or French fries or beer or whatever it is that your favorite treat is. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people think that they have to do all or none, and they label food as good and bad. But I don't look at food as good and bad. I look at food as cause and effect. For instance, when people eat vegetables, they tend to feel light and energetic and healthy. And when people eat processed foods or refined foods and junk food, they tend to feel heavy and lethargic. So there's no good or bad, it's just cause and effect.
Right.
Now, when junk food is overconsumed, then it can lead towards illness and disease. So I tend to recommend people, enjoying making good decisions most of the time, but still giving yourself the opportunity to have that splurge meal. Take one meal a week or two meals a week that you can eat whatever you want without any guilt and without any shame. And this is a really big one because people, often look at food as something that gets in the way of them becoming the person that they want to be, which is thin and healthy. But nothing
Mhm.
could be further from the truth. You see, when you make peace with food and you don't look at food as something that's good or bad, or I have to eat healthy or not healthy, and instead shift your belief system so that you're navigating the world based upon what feels good for you. And when you return to eating consciously, something amazing happens. All of a sudden, you're instead of moving from I have to eat this because this is what the health experts say. This is the paleo diet, or this is the good decisions diet, or this is the South Beach diet. Instead of looking outward for other people to tell us what we should and should not be eating, we can return to our inner hunger signal and our own inner guidance. And when we tune into our body and say, hey, body, what am I hungry for?
Mm.
Eventually, what will happen is the body will guide you. And what will happen is instead of sitting down to a container of ice cream and eating the whole container, when you tune in and you eat that ice cream consciously, oftentimes you'll only need maybe 2 or 3 bites.
Mm.
I have a friend of mine who did this with chocolate pudding, and it was really amazing. I'd met him like 2 or 3 times, and every time he was talking about the chocolate pudding that was in his refrigerator. And so he tried this, and he went to the refrigerator and he got the chocolate pudding, and he looked at the chocolate pudding and he held it into his hand, and he appreciated everything that chocolate pudding had to go through to get to him. And he smelled the chocolate pudding, and then he took a bite of the chocolate pudding like he had never eaten it before. And he
Mm.
tasted the sweetness and the smoothness, and he enjoyed it. And he only ate 2 bites, and then he
Mm.
put the rest of the container away. And
Yeah.
for him, that was huge because that's the first time that he'd ever only eaten 2 bites. And so I tell people that, instead of looking at eating as something that's, I have to do this or I'm not going to be healthy, I would say, don't get caught up in the good and the bad of food, but get caught up in what's your body want and what does
Yeah.
your body need, and don't attach any good or bad to it. And you'll find naturally that your body will be drawn towards the healthier foods, and that's what you will want.
Yeah, that's kind of like how I live my life. I'm probably eating pretty well, like for what I really need to my body, 80% of the time, and 20% I really don't stress. And if I'm going to a party or something, there is something that it's not really healthy, but I go and I enjoy the food I eat, and I
Yes.
know that I'm enjoying the food. I'm not like restricting. And I think that's the difference between a restriction and abundance. The mentality also, it's really
Yes.
important, right? However, I think still we have to mention this. It's not for every situation, for every person. There are some people who have to be really restrict. I mean, like they have to try to follow 100% because of different situations. Different, they might have a immune problem, autoimmune disease, right? So you have to see the each case specifically. I think we have to tell this to our audience. We're not having, we're not saying everybody should have a cheat day, right?
Well, it's really interesting. As soon as you tell somebody that they can't have something, they want it even more.
That's
And
true.
and there is no can or can't. We all have a choice. When I see people that are facing autoimmune conditions, and very serious health conditions, oftentimes, and my community or my followers may be very different than yours. Yours might be more of athletic community.
Mhm.
But often the people that I see, they feel the pressure of that I have to eat this all the time. And what happens is they go into rebellion and they feel that they don't have a choice. And so, I really like to put all of the choices on the table and empower that person to understand that this isn't something that they have to do. They can choose to eat really crappy, and they can choose to go downhill and continue down that path of ill health and eventually die an early death. I mean, that's always a choice that we all have. And the question becomes, and this is kind of the difficulties for a lot of people, is that they want to make that choice to heal their bodies and to overcome that autoimmune condition, or they want to lose weight, but they don't know how. And typically, what's happening is there's some kind of a conflict that's going on. For instance, anyone that has an autoimmune disease or diabetes or any health condition where they feel that they have to eat healthy in order to reach their goal.
Hmm.
But there's a conflict in their life. Let's say that that person is using food to fill one of their human needs. And we have, some of our basic human needs is for love and connection. And some people use food to meet that need for love and connection when they sit down with friends and they sit down with family, or they'll sit down with the food for themselves. It's a way of feeling connection to themselves. And so they'll commiserate with their friends of, I can't lose weight and I can't do this, so let's go have some ice cream, or let's go have some dessert, or let's eat unhealthy together. So it's a way of connecting with and bonding to people. And as long as they have that need being met by food, it's going to be very difficult to say, okay, I have to do everything. So there's the conflict. And
Yeah.
so if people can resolve that inner conflict and find other ways to meet their important needs, whether they're using food for love and connection, whether they're using it for significance, screw this, I don't care, I don't really want to be thin anyway. It's a way of kind of exerting our power. So when we can, guide our clients back to their hunger signal, their satiation signal, and look at how this person might be using food to meet their needs and
Yes.
empower them to find other ways of meeting those needs, then that person will naturally, I believe, gravitate towards eating and making good decisions most of the time, if not all of the time. And then it becomes overcoming that immune disease instead of being this huge thing, just kind of naturally unfolds and evolves.
Hey guys, what's up? Bruno Gama here, Brazilian Health Nut, and let's take a little break from the show because I would like to offer you something. If you go to my website, www.brazilianhealthnut.com, and click on the page Burn Fat Forever, you can go ahead and claim your free consultation with me right now, okay? Or you can just send me an email at brazilianhealthnut@gmail.com, so you can start to lose weight and feel healthier right now, okay? So go ahead and claim your free consultation with me, and remember that spots are limited, okay? Now let's get back to the show. I want to talk about this inner conflict a little more later, get more
Okay.
deep. But before that, you have something going back to the strategies to overcome overeating,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something like stop when your body is satisfied.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that sounds easy, right? But how do you recognize, especially when you're overeating, like emotionally, right? How do you, practically talking, how do you recognize that?
Okay. Well, typically, if there's emotional eating, typically comes from the head, and physical satiation comes from your body. And so being in tune with your satiation signal is really key. So, I encourage people to really play around with this. So sit down to a meal and be really, really conscious and do like what we talked about with the pudding. Honor where
Mm.
the food came from. Take a few deep breaths. Smell your food. Shut off all the distractions that are around you and sit down and eat your meal consciously. And what you'll find is you'll eat the first bite and then you'll eat the second bite, and then at some point during that meal, your body will send you a subtle signal that says, "Wow, that was really good, but now I'm done."
Mhm.
And then if you continue to eat, then you'll begin to experience a fullness, and you might feel a little tired as your body begins to kind of reroute energy to your stomach to start dealing with the food that you've digested. And if you continue to eat past that food, that point, then you'll experience discomfort.
Yeah. Is
Then
this it's kind of like eating to 80% full when people say like, oh, eat until you're 80% full?
oh
Is that
gosh,
something
yeah,
similar?
you can eat to 10%, 15 to 20 to 30 to 40, all the way up to 100%. Your 100% full is your post Thanksgiving meal where everybody's passed out on the couches.
Mhm.
And it's good to know the different levels of satiation. But the one thing that can trip people up is that, and this is the funniest part, is that you'll be in the middle of this absolutely delicious meal, and you'll be tuned into your physical body, and your physical body will say, wow, that was really great, but now I'm done. And your fork will be kind of like paused midway between your plate and your mouth. And then all of a sudden, this little devil will crawl up onto your shoulder and start whispering into your ear, oh, just eat that other bite, eat the rest of your plate. You don't really want to be skinny anyway, or,
Mm.
you've had a rough day. And the mind will start coming up with all of these reasons why you should keep eating. And so, when it comes to stopping when your physical body is satisfied, it's imperative to know the difference between the voices in your head, which I call the thinking mind, versus your observing self, your inner guidance.
Right, right.
And the key in that one is that the voice in your head, the little devil that's on your shoulder, that's going to be chaotic in nature. You're going to feel and sometimes it will be really mild, where it'll just be like a mild chaoticness, or you'll feel it in your head, versus being totally at peace and calm and being in your physical body.
Yeah, the little voice is not us really. That little voice is just somebody like saying, "Oh, eat that because we don't know when it's not gonna have food again." It might be, "Oh, it feels good." It's like it's dopamine release. So it's
Yes. Yes. And so
Mm.
really increasing your awareness and going, oh, there's my thinking mind.
Yes,
Oh, okay,
exactly.
that's not my thinking mind. That's my little devil. And my sister, she named her little devil Hermie. It's really funny. She goes, oh, there's Hermie again.
Yeah, I call
Yeah.
the monkey mind.
Yeah. Monkey mind's great for that. Absolutely.
Another thing here that I saw that you use with the clients, it's journaling. I also love journaling. And how can you tell a little bit how are you dealing with this subject? How does
Yeah.
it work for losing weight and
Yeah.
overcoming these obstacles?
So this is really great because oftentimes people will go, okay, Danny, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna try this, and they'll go home or they'll have a rough day, and they'll go, okay, what does Danny tell me to do? Eat when I'm hungry, okay, stop when I'm full, okay, and then oh, what's the other thing that I'm supposed to do? Oh yeah, I'm gonna be calm, I'm gonna tune into my inner guidance. Well, you know what? It was a rough day. I'm gonna grab that beer anyway, right? I mean, you might have one of those days where your boss is being a jerk, or your employees aren't doing what you want them to do, and your kids are running around the house like crazy, and it's like, being present is just not enough, and you need something more. I tell people, when you feel that compulsion to go for food, reach for your journal instead, because there's an energy to it, right? There's that chaotic, compulsive energy of eating when we're not hungry, or getting ready to binge, or reaching something that we know is not conducive to our health. And instead of reaching for that food, if we can reach for a journal instead and just get it out, puke on paper, write down, my boss is a jerk, my employees aren't doing what I want them to do, my car's not running well, my children are running around the house like little monkeys, and I've got this project due, and I'm not feeling up to it, and I just don't know that I can handle this, and just get it out. And eventually what will happen is you'll end, that puking will end, and then you have on paper what it is that's trying to that's pushing you to what it is you're trying to eat, to
Right.
feed, soothe,
The root cause
or
of the
remove.
problems.
Yes, there's the root cause. And then
Mhm.
when you have that root cause, then you can go, oh, this is what I'm trying to feed, this is what I'm trying to soothe, and this is what I'm trying to avoid.
Yes, 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 yes. That reminds me when, like, more than 2 years ago, when I was in a relationship and it was not really good. I was almost depressed, and I remember I had some things like this. I would go and eat so much just to, I don't know, to feel good, right?
Yeah.
Because, but the root cause was the relationship that was not good. It was
Yes.
not the food. The food
Hmm.
is never the problem. The problem is your inner, that's what's going on in your life.
Right.
That's really what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So, difference between small steps and cold turkey. How do you do if your clients? How do you recommend people to do this? Just, oh, let's do this everything at once, or, oh no, this week let's just look into hydration. Let's just look what you're drinking, right? How do you have this conversation? How do you handle?
Well, I really honor the person because everybody is so different. I've had clients that have come into my office and they have that all or none attitude, and they want to drink from the fire hose. And so with those clients, then I will sit down and I'll do an all or none approach, and we'll say, okay, let's customize this diet. Let's look at your digestion. Let's look at your blood sugar regulation, and let's set up the game plan. And then oftentimes they'll come back, and some people are able to implement it and do great, and other people are not. And then you just go, okay, well, let's just kind of shift our approach then, and go this other route. Other people really need to go slow. Taking little baby steps at a time. Oftentimes, especially with sugar, sugar is one of the most, I feel, addictive substances out there.
Hmm.
And it can be very difficult to get off of sugar because of so many reasons. Not only, I mean, is it one of the ideal foods that we can use to soothe ourselves because it tickles our dopamine center and it releases these euphoric endorphins that make us feel great. But in addition to that, we can go after that high. Sometimes we don't even need to be depressed to reach for sugar. Sometimes we like it just because it makes us feel good.
Yeah, and it's everywhere.
Yeah, and it's
So easy to, yeah,
yes.
it's legal. It's legal.
Yes, and so in that situation, I'll have people just begin to slowly wean themselves off of sugar. For instance, if someone puts 4 teaspoons of sugar in their coffee, just bring it down to three. And when you get to that point where you're at three and that's totally fine, then bring it down to two. So that way, the person gets the feeling of accomplishment, and I think this is really important. So, as humans, we are hardwired to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And
Hmm.
so our brains get stuck into these patterns and these habits. And oftentimes we try to make too big of a change, and we can't quite achieve it. And so then we fail and then we feel bad about ourselves. But if we start off small and we make these small little changes, then we can have this feeling of accomplishment. And when we get that feeling of accomplishment, something happens. A sensation shoots up to the brain and tickles a different area in the prefrontal cortex that's responsible for executive control. And this is what, then you get a different high. You get a high of achievement, a high of, I did this, a feeling of empowerment. So, while everybody's different, some people love the all or none approach. Most people I have found need to take smaller baby steps that are easier to accomplish. And when they accomplish it, then they get that feeling of exhilaration of having achieved something.
Yeah, it's all about knowing thyself, right? I think
Yes,
it's
yes.
more than anything.
And as a practitioner, I think that can be really hard because we get so excited about all of the things that we can do. And
Yeah, when I say everything at once, like,
oh
oh,
yeah,
do this.
oh, I totally did that when I first started practicing, and then I began to realize that okay, I was kind of serving my own excitement as opposed
Yeah,
to what the client really needs. Yeah.
exactly. Danny, is there any food, like, particularly that you like to include in a diet to balance this emotional side,
Um,
the mental side?
well, I love multiple nutrients that are good for blood sugar control because so many of the people that I see are dealing with, sugars and sweets, and we're talking about addictive tendencies, and oftentimes those deplete a lot of the B vitamins. So sometimes I'll use prenatal, sometimes I'll do like a one a day. And then it just depends on the individual person, of course. If someone's got a lot of the emotional stuff, depending upon, if their digestion is shut down as a result of that, then of course I'll definitely begin to look at herbs that may be more relaxing in nature. I'm also a clinical herbalist.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so it just kind of depends upon the person, but yeah, definitely nutrient dense foods. And if I can't get somebody to eat the nutrient dense foods, then yeah, I'll reach for supplements. You bet.
Do you have any favors that you can share with us, or it's very
Oh,
particular
no,
to the
no, I
situation?
do. I have some favorites. So I love, for digestion, I really enjoy triphala. It's a tridoshic herbal combination that's really wonderful for sluggish digestion. So anyone that's really constipated, or they're holding on to things and they're having a hard time letting go, I really love triphala. That's really nice. I also love neem, which is a really great herb for, it's a very bitter herb that can
How do you spell that?
Neem.
Neem. Okay, never heard about this
Yeah,
one.
it almost reminds me of the little minions, neem, neem, neem.
Hmm.
Um, and then, for blood sugar regulation, I love the bioglycosine forte,
Hmm.
and that's through biotics.
Yep.
For hormonal imbalances, it just depends upon the person. I use a lot of Dong Quai, Shatavari, ashwagandha. Yeah, it just kind of depends upon the person, but those are definitely some of my favorites. What probiotics? I love using probiotics.
Hmm.
Especially if I can't get someone to eat the fermented foods.
Fermented foods.
Yeah, because some people love that stuff and some people really don't, and so I use Prescript Assist, and I also love the Inner Plexus of Kent. They have a Rejuvaflora series. They've been out of stock with it for a while, but that's another one that I really really like.
Awesome. A lot of good resource. Thank you so much
You
for
bet.
that. So my last question here, one of my last questions is about unconditional love. What does this has to do with weight loss, if you
Oh,
can say that?
yeah, unconditional love has pretty much everything to do with weight loss because, you know, when we love ourselves and we care about ourselves enough to care about what's going on inside of us, inside of our heads, inside of our bodies, then we make peace with food, right? All of a sudden, food, when we love ourselves unconditionally and we begin to walk the path of acceptance and allowance, and we become present with ourselves and our life, we begin to see that we're so worthy. I think two of the main fears that everyone has underneath everything is the fear of not being good enough and the fear of not being loved.
Mhm.
And when we can return to our own inner truth and we come to the realization, it's not like we're remembering it. It's not like we have to convince ourselves that we're worthy, because we are worthy. That's just who we really are beneath the chaos of our thinking mind, is someone who is absolutely worthy and absolutely lovable. And when we
Yeah.
get to that point where we accept ourselves and allow ourselves and we're at peace with ourselves, then we don't need to feed, soothe, or avoid anything. And emotional eating fades away. And eating just becomes something that we do to feed our physical body, and something that we can do to get together with people socially. And it becomes so much more enjoyable. There's no guilt and there's no shame with it. So, yeah, it's big.
Yeah, that's a big topic.
Yeah.
Just scratching the surface. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us that I haven't asked you, or that you think it's cool for us to to know about it?
I would say I would touch on a little bit more about resolving the inner conflicts, because that seems to be what comes up for a lot of people is they say, I want to lose weight and I really want to get healthy, but I'm using food in a way to soothe myself, right? Or to meet one of my needs. So I would encourage people to look at how they're using food to meet their needs. Am I using it for variety in my life? Is my life get really boring? Is my life boring and I'm using it to, bring me something change, some variety in my life? Or am I using do I want to lose weight, but I'm really bored and I don't believe that it's okay for me to be present. For instance, so many of us are human doings that we're not human beings. And when
Mm,
we realize that we're using food as something to keep us busy, then that can be a conflict that needs to be resolved first. So, resolving the conflict of, okay, it's okay for me to be a human being, not a human doing.
yeah.
So, resolving the inner conflicts, I think, can be really, really helpful because, most of the time we don't realize how we're using food to meet our needs. So, yeah.
Yeah. The takeaway from me from this call today is this the inner conflict. So it's a very important subject
Mhm.
to talk about it. So Danny, where can people find you and what's next for you now?
Well, they can find me at gooddecisions.com. What is up? What's new for me? Wow, there's so much. I am really enjoying working with people on overcoming emotional eating, and I'm doing a book tour. I'm doing some public speaking. We're doing some workshops, and I'm sensing an online program that I'm working on to take people through the process of overcoming emotional eating online, one
Mm.
module at a time, and we're hoping to launch that by spring. And I think I'm feeling another book inside of me on specifically emotional eating, because the current book, Good Decisions, most of the time, is primarily about nutrition, with some really great recipes and some herbal nutritional nuggets. And at the end of each chapter, I touch on the psychology of food and give the reader homework to begin the journey of overcoming emotional eating. And so I would really love to expand on that and just continue to see where it takes me.
Yeah, that's a great subject. Will you be in New York by any chance during the book signing?
There's a good chance that I will be. Actually, I think I might be in New York towards September.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So hopefully I will be there and we can hang out. Danny, thank you so much for being here with us today. I appreciate the time and I hope to see you soon.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Brazilian Health Nut Show. Go to www.brazilianhealthnut.com for much more information about how to burn fat for the rest of your life. Hasta luego!